Story 1. I recall reading about archaeologists who were mystified by a carving on an unreachable ledge. After repeated attempts, someone finally got close enough to translate it. Was it poetry? A tribute to the gods? It read, "This is really high." Story 2. When a fake Eli Lilly Twitter account tweeted that insulin would be free. Story 3. Frank Abagnale Jr. got Steven Spielberg to make a movie about his completely made-up life. He was the ultimate con man. Story 4. Someone managed to rickroll Rick Astley on Reddit once. I will see if I can find it later. Story 5. I do not know which is the most effective, but the man paying for an overdue account with a drawing of a spider is my favorite. Story 6. I said the man in Alaska who filled an extinct volcano with car tires and set them on fire scared the whole area into thinking the volcano was erupting. Story 7. Ken M is pretty good and a source of pure frustration for anyone who engages. Story 8. Sorry, I cannot access or reproduce the content at that URL. I can, however, provide a cleaned, text-to-speech friendly summary of the Max Headroom signal hijacking incidents. On November 22nd and 23rd, 1987, 2 television broadcasts in Chicago were illegally interrupted by people impersonating the fictional character Max Headroom. The first interruption occurred during a public television broadcast of a science fiction program and lasted about 25 seconds. A person wearing a Max Headroom mask appeared in front of a strobe light, made brief incoherent remarks, and gestured with a lighter. About 2 hours later, an independent commercial television station was hijacked for about 90 seconds during a sports program. The footage showed a person in the same mask and another person in a rubber suit. The hijackers made slurred, mocking comments, played pre-recorded audio, and displayed crude behavior on camera. The signal intrusion used a stronger transmitter to override the station's feed. Max Headroom was a satirical, computer-generated television personality created for British and American entertainment. The hijackers used that image to disguise their identities. Investigations by the Federal Communications Commission and the Federal Bureau of Investigation followed, but the perpetrators were never identified or charged. The incidents remain unsolved and are noted for their bold takeover of broadcast signals, influence on media security practices, and continuing fascination in popular culture. Story 9. Benjamin Franklin, in order to outcompete another newspaper in town, carried out a decades-long gaslighting campaign. He announced that his rival had died when he was very much alive, claimed an imposter had taken over the rival's paper after that supposed death, and when the rival later actually died, announced the death of the alleged imposter. He played hard. Story 10. The man who pretended to his prospective in-laws that he did not know what potatoes were. Story 11. That Redditor who gave his mother an Obi-Wan Kenobi Jesus picture for Christmas. Story 12. Sacha Baron Cohen exposed people in positions of power and ended careers. Borat was perfect. Who is America? Was great. Story 13. I always laugh that Greta made a small dick joke and baited Andrew Tate so much that he had to make a video response, which eventually led to his arrest. Story 14. A young black college student said she was being cut off from her community because she supported Make America Great Again. She raised funds on GoFundMe from supporters of Donald Trump and then publicly revealed the truth. She was not actually a supporter of Make America Great Again. Story 15. People talked about the film Morbius so much that it was re-released and bombed a second time. Story 16. When Greta Thunberg annoyed Andrew Tate enough that he posted a reply video, a pizza box visible in the shot revealed his location and led to his arrest. Story 17. Andy Kaufman soared so those who followed could merely imitate. Story 18. Napoleon made a shrewd move. He sold Louisiana to the United States for nearly nothing to ensure Britain would never be a superpower. This sort of worked. Story 19. Shakespeare's grave has to be up there. His headstone has no name or dates, but in a time when people believed in curses it reads, "Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. Mess with my grave and I will mess with you." Story 20. Only one name comes to mind, Leroy Jenkins. Story 21. Santa has been used to fool millions of stupid bastards, myself included. Story 22. After about 20 years working 6 days per week as a parking attendant at an overflow lot near a popular zoo, the attendant stopped showing up. The zoo called the city and asked where the parking attendant was. The city thought the lot belonged to the zoo. No one knew his name. He was never anyone's employee. As far as I know, he was never identified. This was from the 1970s to the 1990s. He was just a random man who set up a small booth with a chair, collected parking fees, picked up the trash, and occasionally raked the lot. He collected an estimated $4 million in cash over about 20 years. Slow clap. Respect. I hope he is enjoying it on a private island, sipping fruity drinks. Story 23. Writers opposed to political correctness tricked 7 academic journals into accepting hoax papers on dog rape, fat phobia, and more. Story 24. The Reddit thread in which Rick Astley got rickrolled. Story 25. Right now in New York, it's being reported the new mayor is requiring children to be taught Arabic numerals, and the right-wing crowd is losing its mind. Story 26. Arnold pretended he really wanted a terrible movie script so Sylvester Stallone would take it from him. I think the film was Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. Stallone took the movie and it bombed. Story 27. The game which you just lost. Story 28. The Satanic Temple is trying to get its sculpture of Baphomet placed next to the 10 Commandments at 2 United States state capitals. Story 29. I heard about an end of high school prank where they released 3 sheep on the school grounds. They spray painted the numbers 1, 2, and 4 on their sides. Suffice to say, a lot of time and resources were spent searching for number 3. Story 30. On April 1st last year, someone posted a picture of a cast iron pan in a dishwasher to the subreddit cast iron that read, "I have washed it 3 times and it is still dirty." The subreddit went crazy until someone pointed out the date. Story 31. We're no strangers to love. You know the rules, and so do I. Story 32. Spaghetti trees. In the 1950s, the British Broadcasting Corporation used its serious news program Panorama to convince the British public that spaghetti grew on trees in Switzerland as an uncharacteristic April Fool's Day joke. Hundreds of people called to ask how to grow their own. Story 33. After Twitter began allowing anyone to buy a blue verification badge, someone impersonated an insulin manufacturer and tweeted that insulin was free. The tweet caused the company's stock to fall sharply. Story 34. Trickle-down economics. The Great Slide into the Toilet for the United States started in 1980. The Republican Party gets high marks for the long game, that's for sure. Story 35. Boxy. She was known as the queen of the random board on 4chan. She trolled obsessive users relentlessly, the type who would find where people lived for good or bad reasons. Notably, in one case, a man was torturing cats, and 4chan users located him by using techniques such as the position of stars in the sky to track him down. He was arrested and charged. Throughout that time, she did not give them any information. She only provoked them. She repeatedly said, "Tits or get the fuck out." And not a single racy photo was leaked, found, or posted, and no personal information was revealed. She suffered no negative effects. Many 4chan users came to accept and defend her. She confronted many involuntary celibate men and prevailed. Rare, even unique. I was going to give a notable mention, but she deserves her own reply. Story 36. Rick Astley getting rickrolled on Reddit was pretty great. Story 37. I would say the man who, while trapped in a city and outnumbered, opened the gates and played music from the city wall. The enemy assumed it was a trap and withdrew. Alternatively, there are many historical examples of armies building decoy units and tanks. Story 38. Save Toby. Most people here will not be old enough for this. Story 39. Flat Earthers. I refuse to believe that this is not a troll. Or at least it started as one. Story 40. Workers who built one of the Egyptian monuments hid insults to some of their bosses, including not safe for work drawings of their genitals. Talk about a long-lasting critique. Story 41. I believe the modern flat earth idea began as a trolling meme started on 4chan. Story 42. I absolutely refuse to believe that earring Magic Ken was a twink trolling Mattel. The figure is literally wearing a cock ring around his neck. There is no way it was just an accident. Story 43. Not on par with some of these, but I read a post here about a small town in the United States with two car dealerships that had been in serious competition for years. It turned out the same man owned both and had been profiting the whole time. Story 44. In terms of scale, the Yes Men trolled Dow Chemical by falsely claiming the company would take responsibility for the Bhopal disaster, causing its stock to drop by about $2 billion. It was one of the greatest political trolls of all time. Story 45. There are some theories that Machiavelli's The Prince is actually a work of satire or worse, instructions on how to make a ruler's position untenable and primed for overthrow rather than solidifying it. Story 46. Nicholas Bourbaki. Story 47. ICOJ. Story 48. The Colbert Report received a contribution for its Super Political Action Committee from Sukmatic and his mother Munch Mitsuchi. Story 49. George Santos was pretty good until it caught up with him. Story 50. The Tide Pod hysteria was not real. It was a propaganda meme used to test how gullible the American public was. Story 51. Smoking bananas. In the 1960s, there was a hoax that you could get high on a fictional substance called bananadine by drying banana peels and smoking them. Story 52. The taunt, I know you are, but what am I? Terrorized elementary schools for years, with nothing ever topping it. Story 53. Donald Trump's rise to power. I wouldn't call it great, but it is hard to think of a more surreal troll on the entire country. A reality television bit somehow snowballed into reshaping the entire United States political landscape in ways we will deal with for generations to come. Story 54. Make America Great Again is an extension of Ronald Reagan's trickle-down con, with a side of protecting pedophiles. None of those politicians believed it. They laugh at their supporters all the way to the bank, and they still do. Marjorie Taylor Greene was a believer who crossed over from the supporter side to the conmen side, which is why she was booted out. She actually believed the lies she was peddling about being against pedophiles. Those politicians know they support pedophiles. Story 55. Putin at this point has to be up there with what he is doing to the United States. Story 56. Christianity as a whole is one of the wealthiest institutions on the planet, and it began its grift and extortion hundreds of years ago with a completely made-up story. Story 57. A man who was leaving the army created a fake memo claiming that the term battle buddy was being replaced with warrior companion. The rumor spread like wildfire, and the person responsible posted the full story online. Story 58. The Berners Street Hoax, November 27, 1810. Story 59. I did not see this in the comments yet, but it is hard to top. Story 60. Identity politics were started by 4chan trolls on Tumblr. Story 61. Juan Pujol Garcia, also known by the codename Garbo, was a Spanish man who hated fascism so much during World War II that he became the leading spymaster for the Third Reich based solely on fictional reports he created about England. He invented dozens of agents to populate his spy network, to the point that the Nazis did not bother recruiting other spies. Story 62. I tried to convince the world that carrots are good for your eyesight. My parents and others from that generation did not believe me. To this day, I wear glasses because I did not eat enough carrots. Story 63. I think one of the funniest moments in the story of modern art is the discovery of the Modigliani heads in the Canal of Livorno. In Italy, almost all national broadcasters covered this immense discovery, and the most acclaimed sculpture experts were sure about the authenticity of the facial lines and other traces attributed to Modigliani's style. 3 students made them with a Black & Decker drill and fooled the best international art critics. Story 64. The perfect dick picture. Story 65. Yes, it is the spider. Story 66. The man who managed to convince thousands of people that it was not his penis stuck in a tube of M&Ms with microwaved mashed banana but a cylinder is still continuing the act 2 years later. Story 67. The mosque in an Arizona town featured in Sacha Baron Cohen's bit was so good. Story 68. The mysterious letter S that everyone knows about is often considered the first meme. Runner-up is the collective rumor that Marilyn Manson removed his ribs so he could perform oral sex on himself. Story 69. A man burns tires in a volcano on April 1st. Story 70. America is fighting for freedom when it is, in fact, the oppressor. Story 71. Old Holborn. This gives an idea. I am a Scouser, someone from Liverpool. He made some very off-color jokes about the Hillsborough disaster that got him into a lot of trouble. The backlash came mainly from locals who were particularly affected, though most of us did not care. His jokes were not original. He was reposting material from an old Bombs World forum. He refused to apologize. Never apologize, never explain. They'll just come after you harder, was his refrain. Even when interviewed on national television. He wore a pig mask as his trademark because the Guy Fawkes mask was trademarked. He was also accused of making jokes about the murder of James Bulger, a 2-year-old abducted in Liverpool in 1993 and later murdered, but he did not make those jokes. He could easily have said that he had merely reposted a 10-year-old joke from an old forum and had not mentioned the Bulger murder, but he refused to. By refusing to explain himself, he made himself look worse. He described himself as right-wing, hated the left, and opposed much of what he called the nonsense around it. Although I disagreed with many of his views, he helped solidify my socialism by showing how the left in the West can often resemble the right. He died after a short illness a few years ago, nearly forgotten. For some of us, though, he helped form our political views, namely that shouting and being offended is not how you get anything done. Sleep well, Bob. You would have mocked me for being a Scouser and a supporter of Jeremy Corbyn, but at least your mocking would have been honest. Your refusal to explain your opinions to people who did not probe further would have made you a dreadful politician, a trait you shared with Jeremy Corbyn. Story 72. The Cardiff Giant was created in 1869. George Hull commissioned and buried a large stone figure made to look like a human giant to convince people that giants had existed. He did this to demonstrate that physical evidence could be fabricated and still be believed. Before people discovered the deception, he profited from the hoax. Story 73. 60% of these comments make no sense regarding the prompt. Half of those are people subtly or overtly bringing politics into it for no reason other than it is Reddit. As a result, at least 2 comments saying Trump is bad appear regardless of the subreddit or context. Story 74. I truly believe this. Die Antword. I just saw War of the Worlds mentioned there, and I think Orson wins. Story 75. I do not know, but a few people here are attempting it. Story 76. The free bleeding trend from the website 4chan occurred a while back. Some people convinced feminists that it is empowering to let their period blood run down their legs and that they do not need to apologize for it. Story 77. I remember that man, I think from Norway, who had a butcher shop next to the dormitory with many Muslim residents. He had been selling them pork for years, claiming that it was from a special Norwegian cow breed with whitish meat. Story 78. Texas collegiate football shenanigans. Story 79. It has to be Orson Welles' radio drama adaptation of The War of the Worlds. Story 80. The meter was defined by a French ivory tower academic as 10 millionths of the distance from the North Pole to the equator because 1 millionth would make it hard to find a suitable measuring rod. It is a masterful troll. People argue about the meter without realizing that base 10 has nothing to do with the chosen increment. Their entire case that the meter is superior to the foot or the shaku has nothing to do with that increment. The distance between your hands at your hips is far more useful to anyone who actually works with physical objects than 1/10 millionth of the distance from the North Pole to the equator. Story 81. Sorry, I can't help with that request to reproduce or edit the linked copyrighted review. I can, however, provide an original summary or a version rewritten for Azure text-to-speech with acronyms expanded, punctuation cleaned, and no links or special characters. Would you like a short summary, 2 to 3 sentences, a detailed summary, 3 to 5 paragraphs, or a TTS-ready script? Story 82. A man set several tires on fire on top of a volcano. Story 83. This pretty much sums it up. Story 84. A man flew tires into a volcano and set them on fire, tricking the town into thinking the volcano was erupting. Story 85. The internet's trolling of Sony into re-releasing Morbius was pretty good. Story 86. This will get buried, but the dye workwear guy and the Laura Loomer dog food troll get my vote. Story 87. Marcel Duchamp's The Fountain still angers people today. Story 88. Many years ago, a man bet a friend that he could have everyone talking about a nonsense word in a day. That night, he painted the word all around town. The next day, sure enough, everyone was talking about the made-up nonsense word, wondering what it meant, why it was everywhere, and who had done it. The word was quiz. Story 89. A fake volcanic eruption involved burning a huge pile of tires. Story 90. The alternative tasteless invasion of recreation pets has to be right up there. Story 91. The Democrats baited the president into calling for their deaths. Story 92. The Louisiana Purchase. The French knew they were getting a bad deal, but they wanted the English to have a powerful enemy. Story 93. Italian singer Adriano Celentano released the fake English-language song Presently Nensininsiasol in 1972. The lyrics were nonsensical gibberish written to sound like American English. He wanted to prove that Italians would enjoy American-sounding music even without understanding the words. It was a massive hit. Story 94. During World War II, the United States Navy commissioned the United States ship Shangri-La after President Franklin D. Roosevelt taunted the Japanese about the origin of the Doolittle Raiders. Story 95. The teenager who held an Ask Me Anything session posing as a cancer patient to solicit donations. Story 96. In terms of significance, Donald Trump in 2016. I remember reading articles about the night he won. He was surprised and reacted, "Ah shit, I actually have to go through with this now." Story 97. I have a truly wonderful proof for this, but there is no space in the margin of this book. Fermat. Story 98. Zhuge Liang probably beats Brock's siege of Fort Detroit, which is my favorite troll of all time. Story 99. At a Harvard and Yale football game, students from one school convinced the fans of the other school to hold up colored cards that spelled "We suck." I do not remember the specifics. Story 100. In my opinion, this guy is. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.